Wait up, I'm coming. I think this is the right way. Are you sure?
We are here to ensure the safety and security of our people, and we will not falter in our duty.
That don't very like happen in your friend here. Probably going
We also know that you can achieve a higher altitude using this device.
I understand your concerns, gentlemen, but we must proceed with the original plan. The intelligence confirms it.
Thinking about all the good times we shared, it's bittersweet now.
I remember when we first moved here, this wardrobe was the grandest thing we owned. It holds so many memories.
I understand your concerns, gentlemen, but we must proceed with the original plan. The intelligence confirms it.
I remember when we first moved here, this whole street was different.
Yeah. It's hard to imagine it any other way.
I'm on my way to the office right now. I should be there in about 15 minutes.
Hey, come on in. I was just finishing up a few things out here.
The night carried the weight of secrets, and the conference room of the police headquarters pulsed with a tension that felt almost alive. The fluorescent lights humming above like a chorus of judgment as officers exchanged wary glances. Files lay open across the table, photographs of seized narcotics, maps of remote logging sites, and the grainy faces of men already caught, their eyes lifeless in mugshots, yet their silence screamed louder than any confession. At the center of it all loomed one name, whispered with fear and anger: Zone. He was not merely a shadow in the underworld, he was the architect of ruin, a phantom who threaded drugs and illegal timber into veins of society, his hands unseen, yet everywhere. The senior officer struck the table with his knuckles, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "We have traced it back," he declared, his voice low but steady. "The heart of this operation is Zone. He hides behind the sawdust of timber and the screams of addicts. Tonight, we decide how to end it." Murmurs filled the room, some voices hot with eagerness for direct confrontation, others restrained by the weight of caution. "Storm his house," one officer demanded, eyes burning with conviction. "Drag him out in front of his men. Let the city see his empire collapse." Another countered sharply, "And what then? He is too careful. No drugs will be found there, no papers in his name. We raid his den, and he walks free with lawyers at his side. We must corner him when his hands are bloody, when the poison is in transit." The argument rippled like fire on dry leaves until another suggestion carved the air, calm yet deadly. "We release the two we already have. They are pawns, frightened, hungry. He will call them again, and when he does, we strike. Not whispers of crime, but evidence forged in his own grip." Silence fell. The gamble was immense. To free the captured was to unleash danger back onto the streets, yet the bait could draw the serpent from his lair. Finally, the commander spoke, his voice heavy with finality. "We set the trap. Let them run, but our eyes will follow. Zone believes himself untouchable, but we will wait at the edge of his shadow." Decisions were carved into stone that night, and the officers dispersed like soldiers walking into the mouth of fate. Outside, the city breathed its usual indifference, neon lights glowing over alleys where lives were gambled like coins. Yet somewhere in that city, Zone's men sharpened their knives, unaware that the hunters now waited in the dark. Far from the buzzing neon, morning crept into a quiet countryside, and a man awoke on the cold earth, his body heavy as if chained by invisible weights. His eyes fluttered open to the blurred outlines of a world that felt foreign, his breath shallow, his mind clawing through fragments of memory. He tried to rise but stumbled, collapsing back onto damp soil until a voice, aged and kind, yet carrying an iron strength, reached him. "Easy, son. Don't fight the ground. Let it give you strength first." A wrinkled hand, warm and trembling, slid under his arm, lifting him with surprising steadiness. The old woman's face bent over him, a face carved with years of sun and sorrow, yet her eyes gleamed with unyielding fire. She brought him to a wooden bench outside her small hut, its roof patched with rusted tin, its walls breathing the scent of herbs and smoke. "You fell as if the sky itself pushed you," she murmured, pressing a clay cup of warm water into his hands. The man sipped, the liquid grounding him, each swallow awakening a storm of questions inside. Who was he? Why was his body a battlefield of exhaustion? His lips moved, words scratching against the silence. "Thank you. I must go." His voice cracked, but his resolve stood. The woman's gaze lingered, reading unspoken stories in his posture. She did not press him. She had seen too many wanderers, men fleeing ghosts, men chasing redemption. She only nodded and whispered, "Go, but remember, the earth carries every footprint, even those you try to erase." Her words etched into him like prophecy as he staggered away, the road stretching endless before him. He felt hunted by shadows he could not name, as if invisible eyes tracked his every breath. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, the web drew tighter. Zen, a man whose loyalty burned like a torch in storm, dialed his phone with trembling urgency. His voice cracked through the static as he reached Comrade Thon. "We need more men," he urged. "Deep is missing. She was chased into the forest, and now there's no trace. I fear Zone's dogs have her." His words were knives, each one stabbing the calm on the other end. The hand's answer came steady, but beneath it throbbed urgency. "Hold the ground, Zen. I'll send units. Keep searching. Don't let the forest swallow her." Zen's fists clenched around the phone as if he could strangle fate itself. Diep. Her name was more than a name. It was the echo of a heart he could not lose. He had seen too much already, too many lives erased by Zone's greed, and he would not let her vanish into the silence of leaves. The forest loomed ahead, a cathedral of shadows where every rustle felt like betrayal, every branch like a trap. The search began with voices cutting through the darkness, calling her name, each syllable an incantation against despair. "Diep, Diep." The forest answered only with the creak of trees and the distant cry of night birds. Flashlights carved trembling paths across tangled roots, revealing nothing but emptiness. They split into groups, boots crunching over dry leaves, sweat mixing with the dread that tightened throats and quickened pulses. Hours bled into hours, the forest swallowing their cries, until exhaustion painted their faces with despair. Zen felt the weight of hopelessness pressing, yet his will stood, a blade refusing to dull. He whispered into the wind, not as a policeman, but as a man begging the universe. "Hold on, Deep, hold on." His breath hung like smoke in the night, a fragile thread tethering him to hope. When dawn threatened, a phone buzzed in the pocket of one comrade. The voice on the line was sharp, trembling with haste. "We saw her," he reported. "A girl, her face like Deep's, near Van Swan. She was running, frightened." The message shattered the fog of despair like glass. Zen's eyes blazed, fire reborn in the ashes. "Van Swan," he repeated, as if the word itself was a key to salvation. Without pause, the team gathered, their exhaustion forgotten, and turned toward the new horizon. The forest behind them remained silent, a witness to unanswered cries. But ahead lay a fragile spark. And in the shadows, somewhere between trees and lies, Zone smiled unseen, knowing the game had only begun. The journey to Vanishes began not with the triumph of discovery, but with the heavy drumbeat of dread that echoed in every step. The police convoy slicing through early dawn roads as shadows clung stubbornly to the edges of fields, the headlights carving desperate lines across landscapes, still half dreaming. Zen sat in the lead vehicle, his fists clenched on his knees, the veins in his arms rising like ropes under skin, his thoughts a storm of guilt and determination, because every tick of the clock was a knife against his conscience. He had promised to protect Diep, not in words, but in the silent vow that grew each time her laughter brushed the edges of his soul. And now she was lost, perhaps trapped in the claws of Zone's men, and the forest whispered only silence in return. The radio crackled with fragments of reports, words breaking apart under static, but carrying enough to remind them that time was a predator, running faster than their engines. When they reached Vanishes, the village still slept, its narrow alleys bathed in pale gray light, doors shut, the scent of damp earth rising from gardens where dew trembled on leaves. The comrade who had called earlier pointed toward the hills beyond the village, where the forest stretched like a living wall, a labyrinth where secrets nested. She was there, he insisted, his eyes hollow with exhaustion, running as if the night itself chased her. The team dispersed with silent precision, moving like hunters but carrying the fragile hope of rescuers, their footsteps absorbed by the earth. Zen led one group deeper into the trees, the damp air thick with the perfume of moss and decay, each branch snapping underfoot sounding like betrayal. His voice carried low, urgent. "Diep, hold on, we are coming." But the forest gave no reply, only the rustle of unseen creatures and the distant caw of a crow, mocking in its loneliness. Meanwhile, far from the search, in a decrepit warehouse on the outskirts of another town, Zone sat upon his throne of shadows. The room was dim, lit only by the orange glow of cigarettes and the faint hum of machines that packed his fortune into hidden crates. He was not a man of wild rages. He was a serpent, his fury cold, measured, and lethal. His men stood around him, restless, eager to spill blood for his amusement. They released the two, Zone mused, his lips curling into a smile that had no warmth. Do they think I am blind? Do they believe I cannot smell bait when it is laid before me? His laughter was soft, but it sliced the air like glass. He waved his hand, dismissive. Let them play. We will lead them deeper until they are tangled in the roots they cannot cut. Then his gaze sharpened, a blade in darkness. But the girl, he hissed, she is the key. She is not to be harmed, yet fear is more useful alive than dead. His words sent shivers down spines because Zone's cruelty was never loud. It was patient, deliberate, a poison that seeped slowly until there was no escape. In Vanishes' forest, the hunters became the hunted. Unseen eyes watched Zen and his team, footsteps trailing theirs like shadows mimicking form. At times, Zen felt it. The prickle at the back of his neck, the whisper of leaves that did not belong to wind. He raised his fist, halting his men. They're here, he murmured. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Then chaos erupted. Figures leapt from the undergrowth, faces masked, blades gleaming, and the quiet air fractured into violence. Shouts collided with gunfire, the forest screaming in echoes. Zen lunged forward, his fist cracking against a masked jaw, his body moving with desperation more than training. A comrade fell beside him, clutching a wound while another fired wildly into the trees. It was not a battle for victory, but for survival, every second stretching into eternity. Amid the carnage, Zen's voice tore through the chaos. Where is she? Where is Diep? but the only reply was a cruel laugh, vanishing into the trees as the attackers melted back into shadow, leaving bodies, blood, and silence in their wake. The ambush was not meant to kill. It was meant to remind them of their powerlessness. As Zen gathered his wounded, fury simmered beneath his exhaustion. He knew then that Zone was not simply defending, he was orchestrating, pulling them like puppets on strings. Still, retreat was not an option. "We push forward," Zen growled, his jaw set, his body aching yet unbroken. "If we stop, we lose her." His men followed, their loyalty binding them tighter than fear. Elsewhere, the man who had been saved by the old woman wandered into the same forest, guided by forces he did not fully understand. His mind had returned in fragments, names and faces bleeding into clarity, and among them, one name echoed louder: Diep. He did not know why she mattered, only that she did, as if their fates were entwined before memory could catch them. The old woman's words haunted him. Every footprint remains. His were now leading him into danger, but he embraced it, because something in him whispered that this was where he was meant to be. He stumbled upon traces, a piece of torn fabric caught on a thorn, the faint impression of small shoes in the mud, and his pulse quickened. He followed, unaware that Zone's men also circled, closing the net. Diep, meanwhile, was indeed alive, her breath ragged as she crouched in a hidden hollow, her body bruised, her spirit trembling but unbroken. She pressed a hand against the earth, feeling it as if it could give her strength, whispering silently, "Hold me, do not let them take me." She remembered the night's chase, the shadows that lunged from trees, the hands that reached but missed as she ran with a desperation born of survival. Now, alone, she listened to the distant echoes of combat, her heart torn between fear and hope. Someone was searching for her. She felt it in the marrow of her bones. She closed her eyes, picturing Zen's determined gaze, the warmth of his voice, and it fueled her to remain still, to wait for rescue. Back in Zone's warehouse, news arrived like a poisoned gift. "They are close," one messenger whispered. Zone smiled, slow and deliberate. "Good. Let them believe they are winning. Let them come deeper. When they think they have found her, then we shall close the jaws." His men nodded, but unease lingered. They had seen his traps before, and they knew that even victory under Zone left scars. By dusk, Zen's team stumbled into a clearing, their bodies weary, their souls fraying. They had lost men. They had found nothing but signs that teased them like mirages. Then came the call, a voice sharp through the radio. Movement spotted near the river, a girl running. Zen's heart pounded. "Hold position. We are on our way." They sprinted, the forest blurring, every branch clawing at them as if the trees themselves conspired to delay. When they reached the riverbank, silence greeted them, save for the rush of water. Then a figure appeared across the water, fleeting, a glimpse of white cloth, vanishing into shadows. Zen roared her name, "Diep!" But the river swallowed his cry. The night fell once again, heavier, crueler. Zen sank to his knees, his reflection in the river fractured, his resolve burning but bruised. He swore into the darkness, "I will not stop. I will tear down every shadow, every lie, until I bring you back." The forest did not answer, but somewhere, Diep shivered in her hiding place, whispering the same promise to herself. Zone, in his lair, exhaled smoke into the night. The serpent coiled tighter, readying the next strike, and the man guided by fate pressed onward, unaware that he carried the thread that could unravel the entire web. The game had only begun, and the night promised that the cost of truth would be blood. The darkness of Van Xuan clung like a second skin, the air heavy with the scent of wet soil and fear, and Zen moved through it with his men, their flashlights trembling against the void, each beam carving through mist, but finding only fragments of broken branches and deceptive silence. His body was exhausted, torn by bruises and weight, yet his soul burned with the relentless fire of a promise he refused to abandon. He would find Diep, or he would leave his last breath in this forest. Somewhere not far, the girl crouched in shadows, whispering prayers to trees, and the predator they all hunted, Zone, coiled deeper into his maze, pulling strings that turned hunters into prey. The radio hissed again, a voice sharp with panic. Movement on the eastern ridge, unidentified figures. Zen barked orders, his tone stripped of all softness. Split, surround, no hesitation. His men obeyed, the forest splintering with their steps, but Zen felt it. The trap tightening, invisible threads binding them closer to the jaws of a beast who watched unseen. Far away, in the hollow of a ruined shrine deep within the forest, the man once saved by the old woman staggered, his memory now a storm breaking open. Images crashed inside him, an ambush in the alleys, faces twisted with malice, a name screamed in chaos. Zone. He had been there before, part of the shadows, forced into the periphery of Zone's empire, but he had fled, losing himself until mercy found him in the hands of the old woman. Now, clarity struck with merciless weight. Diep's disappearance was no random cruelty. It was another thread in Zone's tapestry of vengeance, and he, the nameless wanderer, carried knowledge that could shatter it. His body trembled, but his resolve forged steel. He whispered into the night, "I will not run again, not while she bleeds in the dark." Meanwhile, Diep pressed her body tighter into the hollow she had found beneath roots of an ancient tree. Her breath shallow, every heartbeat a thunder threatening to betray her. She heard footsteps, rough voices, the mocking laughter of men searching, promising rewards for her capture. Terror clawed at her throat, but inside, it bloomed a defiance she had never felt before. She thought of Zen, of the strength in his eyes, of the warmth that had made her believe safety could exist, and she clung to that image as if it were armor. Her whispered vow was almost inaudible. "I will not break, not tonight." At Zone's warehouse, lit by the flicker of dying bulbs, the serpent prepared his strike. His lieutenant stood around maps and charts, detailing every move of the police, every path Diep might take, but Zone alone saw beyond lines and numbers. He leaned over the table, fingers tapping rhythmically, his voice low, deadly, mesmerizing. "They believe they hunt me. They do not realize I have already chosen the place they will die." He pointed toward the heart of the forest, a clearing near the river where old logging machines rusted like skeletons. "There, we end their illusions. Bring her to the edge. Let them see her. And when hope blinds them, we close the jaws." His men nodded, their loyalty rooted not in love, but in fear of the venom he could unleash. Zen's team pushed harder, exhaustion threatening mutiny in their muscles, but the fire in his voice dragged them forward. Then, through the trees, they glimpsed light, faint, trembling, like a candle in a tomb. They approached cautiously, weapons drawn, and what they saw froze their breath. Across the clearing, bound to the frame of a rusted machine, was Diep, her face pale but defiant, her eyes meeting Zen's across distance, not begging, not broken, but alive, blazing with unspoken words. Zen's chest crushed under the weight of relief and fury. He moved forward, but instinct screamed. It was too perfect, too deliberate. And then the forest erupted. Figures surged from shadows, dozens, blades and rifles gleaming. Gunfire split the night, the world exploding into chaos. Zen roared orders, his men firing, taking cover behind wreckage, the air filled with smoke and screams. He pushed forward, every bullet that whistled past his head a reminder of mortality. But his focus locked on Diep. He reached her, cutting bonds with trembling hands. "You're safe," he gasped, though safety was still a lie. She looked at him, her lips forming a single word: trap. And then the ground itself seemed to tremble as more of Zone's men poured from the trees, their numbers overwhelming, their laughter cruel. Zen shielded her with his body, firing until his weapon clicked empty, then drawing his knife, ready to bleed for every second she could breathe. And then the Wanderer arrived. He emerged from the forest like a ghost reborn, his eyes blazing with memory reclaimed, his hands steady as he struck from behind, tearing through Zone's ranks with desperate ferocity. His presence was a spark in darkness, his voice rising above the chaos. "I know your master's face. I was his shadow, and I escaped him." His words sent ripples through enemies, hesitation seizing some as recognition spread. Zen glanced at him, confusion colliding with relief, but there was no time for questions, only survival. Together they fought, back to back, blades singing until the field was littered with the fallen. At last, a figure stepped into the clearing, calm amid the carnage, his presence more suffocating than the stench of blood. Zone himself. His face was a mask of serenity, his eyes voids where humanity had died. He applauded slowly, mockingly. Impressive, ants who believe they can sting the serpent. His gaze slid to Diep, then to Zen, lingering with curiosity, as if dissecting their souls. "You think love will save her? You think loyalty will unmake me? I built empires on the bones of such illusions." Zen stood, bloodied but unbroken, meeting that gaze without flinching. "Your empire ends tonight," he spat, his voice raw. Zone smiled, soft and terrible. "Then let us see which truth the night will keep." The battle that followed was not merely of fists and steel, but of will against will, light clawing against shadow. Zen and the Wanderer hurled themselves at Zone, every strike fueled by fury, every wound ignored. Zone moved like liquid death, his body precise, his strikes calculated, each motion reminding them that they fought not just a man, but a myth crafted in blood. Deep, though weakened, seized a fallen weapon, her trembling hand steadying with resolve, and fired. The shot tore through the night, grazing Zone, drawing blood for the first time. His eyes widened, not with fear, but with recognition. Recognition that his enemies were no longer prey, but something more dangerous, hope incarnate. The clash raged until dawn bled across the sky, the clearing a graveyard of ambition and defiance. At last, Zone faltered, the Wanderer's blade sinking deep, Zen's final strike crushing him to the ground. The serpent gasped, his venom spilling in broken whispers. "You cannot kill the shadow. I am everywhere." His voice faded, his eyes dimming, until silence claimed him. The forest exhaled, the night lifting its curse. Zen collapsed beside Diep, his arms wrapping around her as if to prove to the universe that she still breathed. She clung to him, tears burning, her voice breaking. "I thought I was lost. I thought I would never see you again." He pressed his forehead to hers, his words a vow carved into eternity. "Never. I will always find you." The Wanderer, wounded but alive, stood over the fallen body of Zone, his past finally exorcised. He turned to Zen and Diep, his voice weary yet free. "Every footprint remains. Mine led me here, to help end him. Perhaps now we can all walk forward." The sun rose, golden light piercing through trees, washing blood with promise. The nightmare was not gone. Scars would remain. But in that dawn, among ruins of shadow, love and defiance had carved a path toward tomorrow. And though Zone's empire smoldered, though whispers of his reach still lingered, one truth burned brighter than fear. Together, they had survived the serpent's jaws. And survival, in a world built on ruin, was itself a revolution.